I love giving book recommendations. There's nothing that I love more. And today I'm going to be giving you some seasonal recommendations based on books that I think feel like summer in different ways. Beachy summers, you've got your small town seaside summers, you've got your thunderstorm, dark moody summers, and all of those different moods really represent very different books, but they all feel like summer in different ways. So I want to recommend a whole bunch of different summer books, and hopefully you'll find one that you'll really enjoy reading over the next couple months of summer. I also at the end of this video want to talk about my own seasonal TBR, the books that I'm looking forward to reading this summer, and so this is going to be half recommendations, half TBR, but it's going to be all summer themed. All right, the first book that I'm going to talk about is one that I read very recently and really adored. It's Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. This book follows our main characters Emma and Justin, and they meet because of a Reddit thread, interestingly enough. Justin is complaining about the fact that every single person that he dates breaks up with him and then immediately meets their soulmate afterwards, like the person that they end up marrying, the person that they are like really head over heels in love with. And so Justin feels kind of cursed, so to speak, that this continues to happen to him. Now Emma finds this Reddit post and says, oh my goodness, that happens to me too. She also keeps dating people who immediately date like the person that they end up marrying immediately after her. So the two of them end up chatting and they decide that in order to mutually break their own curses, they will date one another, because ideally if they date each other and then they break up, they'll each meet their soulmate afterward. Now the reason that this book feels so summery is that it's set on a lake in Minnesota. You can even see on the front cover, Emma and her roommate are staying in a house on an island in the middle of a lake, and it becomes kind of a large plot point traveling back and forth across the lake to this little island. And I think that, besides the title, is why this book really feels like a perfect summer book recommendation. I will also say that it's a very emotional sort of romance, more emotional than I expected going into it. Both characters are dealing with things in their lives and in their pasts that make coming together and forming a relationship a little bit more difficult, and in some cases a lot more difficult, but it's overall a very gratifying, sweet romance that these characters are able to like overcome everything else that's going on in their lives and realize that they're meant to be together, and it's so cute, and I highly recommend it if you're looking for a summer romance. We Can't Keep Meeting Like This is a wedding focused story. Now summer I always think of as wedding season. I'm going to a wedding next weekend and I'm so excited about it, and if you love weddings as much as I do, I feel like a wedding book in the summer, there is nothing better. This book follows our main character Quinn, whose family is a family of wedding planners, and she is a harpist. She plays the harp at a bunch of different weddings, and she is friends with this boy named Tarek, and his family is like a catering business. Now the two of them have known each other forever because their families have been in one another's lives for so long, but last summer Quinn confesses her romantic feelings in a long, rambly like text or email and never receives a response. The next summer begins, and there's definitely some like difficult, awkward tension between the two of them, especially because Quinn is not normally a very romantic sort of girl. She's very like avoidant and reserved, so the fact that she was willing to do that and then it was not reciprocated or even answered is really difficult for her, especially considering that Tarek has historically been very like grand gestures, uber romantic in his, like other areas of his life. So it's very fun to see them come back together and sort of reconcile over a summer with multiple weddings that they're going to, and also just opening up to one another about different things that are going on in their lives. Rachel Lynn Solomon is a pretty popular YA and romance author generally, but I think that this book in particular is pretty underrated within her backlist, and it has mental health representation as well. One of the characters has OCD. So if you like a YA rom-com with mental health representation that is set during the summer, during wedding season, there's a lot of description of the different weddings. I highly recommend We Can't Keep Meeting Like This. One thing about me is that I really enjoy a melancholy middle grade book. These kinds of like coming of age stories where the characters are kind of dealing with and grappling with difficult subjects for the first time in their lives. They're books, since they're middle grade, that are targeted towards a young audience, so they're able to talk about these really difficult topics but in a way that imbues them with so much hope and are kind of like uplifting just as much much as they're sad. And one of my favorite authors who deals in that sort of genre is Kacen Callender, and the summary book that I'm going to recommend is King and the Dragonflies. This book follows our main character, King. At the very beginning of the book, King's older brother dies very unexpectedly, but King becomes convinced that this one dragonfly that he keeps seeing is his brother reincarnated and coming back to visit him. So the book really revolves around his brother's death and the way that that rocks his family and the way that they're all grieving and sort of trying to deal with that. But meanwhile, King is pretty sure that he might be gay, and he's having a hard time feeling like he would be accepted by his family and feeling like he would have been accepted by his brother. So it's a pretty heavy, hard-hitting book in terms of its themes, but I felt like it was handled with a lot of hope, and it felt really like uplifting towards the end rather than just hopelessly sad the whole time. This book is set in the backwaters of a small Louisiana town, and so you can really feel that atmosphere and that setting. You can feel the humidity and the thickness of the hot summer in the South, and for that reason I think it's a really good summer read. Next, let's talk about Black Cake. This book follows our two main characters, Benny and Byron. They are estranged siblings who are brought together once their mother dies, and they find out in her will that their mom really needs them to sit down, share this black cake that she had left for them in the freezer, and listen to these hours-long audio recordings where their mom talked about her life and reveals all these secrets about her life that the siblings didn't know anything about. This book employs sort of a dual timeline structure in that you're going back in time through these audio recordings and then also exploring Benny and Byron's lives in the present day. And I am such a sucker for dual timelines generally, especially within a family drama, but I think this book feels summary specifically because of its setting. In the present day, they're in California, the characters go surfing a lot, and in the past, their mother lived on an island and ended up having to escape this island because of some things that become clear as the book goes on. I read this book in the winter. I think I read it in December, and I remember thinking that it would have been such a better experience to read it during the summer. As much as I enjoyed reading it regardless, it was very transportative. I think it would have been so much fun to read this book during the kinds of weather in which it takes place, just like reading it out in the sun. The story really revolves around resilience and survival and family and friendship and motherhood, and I just loved everything about it. I do think that the mother's chapters, like the back in time audio recordings, were a little bit more interesting to me than the present day sibling drama, but it was still really strong, and I highly recommend if you're looking for a family drama to read this summer. Malibu Rising, an adult contemporary, a very different kind of family drama following four siblings who live in the beachy setting of Malibu. We flash back and forth between different timelines following both these siblings growing up and also these siblings in the present day when one of them is throwing a huge party at their house, and things sort of escalate and become more and more dramatic as this one day of the party goes on. We flash to multiple different characters over the course of this day, but what I liked the most is the focus on the siblings and the way that their relationship was so complicated and yet still so close. Seeing the ways that they cared for each other and that they hurt each other and they lied to each other and they really uplifted one another, that sort of dichotomy and that sort of tension I thought was really fun to read, and one of my favorite things about a family drama, especially a sibling focused family drama. And it's another book obviously where the setting is very strong. This time it is the sandy beaches of Malibu. Next, let's do another romance and talk about 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. This book follows Eva and Shane, who are both present day very successful authors. Shane is a little bit more of a literary writer and Eva writes romances, and they're kind of thrown together at this literary event in New York, and we find out that they have actually known each other for a long time, and they in fact spent 7 days in June together a very long time ago and had this kind of whirlwind romance where things kind of fell apart. We don't know why they were torn apart, but they're reuniting in the present day in the middle of a steamy Brooklyn summer. This is another pretty emotional romance as well, just because the two characters are really overcoming and dealing with a lot in their own lives in order to be able to be together. Goodreads describes it as humorous, warm, and deeply sensual, and so if those are things that you think you would enjoy, I definitely recommend 7 Days in June. I also lastly do feel like I have to talk about Emily Henry. I love all of her books. My favorite I think is People We Meet on Vacation, but the one that I'm going to talk about today is Funny Story. This book follows our main character Daphne and our main character Miles. They become roommates after their exes break up with them and end up getting together. So Daphne's ex-fiance and Miles's ex-girlfriend end up dating each other. And so the two of them each need roommates. Daphne, because she has been kicked out of her house basically because her ex-fiance's name was the one that was on the deed. And so the two of them end up rooming together. The two of them are invited to the wedding of their exes. So as revenge and as a way to mess with their exes, they end up pretending to date. And it's so much fun and also so emotional at times because they're both dealing with these breakups and like where they want to go in life, especially because Daphne had moved to this small beach town in Michigan because it was her ex-fiance's hometown. Like she has no tie to it really, and it's about her creating a home for herself in this very cute small town on Lake Michigan. Emily Henry is pretty famous for her romances, but Miles as a character is one of my favorite romantic leads that she's written so far. I feel like he reminds me a lot, especially in like the scruffy nature of his character, of Nick from New Girl. If you like that show, if you like that character, I feel like you might really enjoy this character as well. And it's another one, obviously, this is the running theme with a strong summery setting. You've got the characters going to the beach, going to the lake, going to wineries. The story has a lot of wedding theming. And so if you are looking for that kind of book, I think Funny Story is perfect. I will say for a book called Funny Story that I personally found this book to be very funny in moments as opposed to overall. It is not a light-hearted book overall. I found it to be quite emotional, but there are lots of individual funny bantery moments, and there were, in fact, I annotated this book, and there were a lot of points where I made like a little star every time something made me laugh out loud. I feel like there was a chapter where I was making little stars like every single page because the characters kept making me laugh. Now for the books that I am so excited to read this summer, my summer TBR. Now, one thing about me is that I love Survivor. It's one of my favorite shows. If anybody ever wants to talk Survivor, let me know because I could like wax on forever. There is an author and a booktuber who is also a big fan of Survivor who actually wrote a rom-com inspired by Survivor. Attached at the hip is Survivor meets The Bachelor in an irresistible romantic adventure. The book follows our main character, Ori, who signs up for this survival competition reality show, which ends up having a romantic twist. So it's like a dating show slash survival show in one, and she is shocked to find out that her high school crush is also on the cast. I think myself being a big fan of reality TV and the Survivor and Bachelor specifically, this book will be so much fun. The perfect kind of like escape for the summer, and I'm really looking forward to reading it. I also this summer would really like to revisit my childhood and reread some Sarah Dessen books. Growing up, Sarah Dessen ruled my summers. She was the coming of age YA rom-com summer sleepy seaside town queen, and so I think it would be so interesting to revisit them and see if I enjoy them as much now as I did growing up, because I do credit Sarah Dessen for why I love contemporary and romance novels so much. I think that reading so many Sarah Dessen books and just becoming so immersed in her writing and in her characters really, it didn't start my love of reading, but definitely helped it to continue throughout like late elementary school and through middle school. And I think it would be so fun to revisit her books, especially The Truth About Forever, Just Listen, and Lock and Key, which were my personal favorites. In terms of books that I already have, I just got Ready or Not from the library. I've had this on hold for a long time. This is a surprise pregnancy novel following our main character, Eve. She lives a very cozy, predictable life until she has an uncharacteristic one-night stand and ends up pregnant. And so over the course of the book, Eve tries to figure out the right next step as she learns that family and love in all forms can sneak up on you when you least expect it. Her best friend's brother ends up stepping up to help her through this kind of difficult time in her life, and they end up falling in love. And I am so excited. I had always thought that I didn't like accidental or surprise pregnancies in books, but then I read Out on a Limb and really loved it. And so it made me kind of like wonder if I was wrong about disliking that trope so much. I feel like I've mostly heard really good things about this book. This is shallow, but I love the cover. I feel like this will be a very cute, breezy rom-com to read this summer, and I am so excited. In terms of nonfiction, I would really like to read Trick Mirror by Gia Tolentino. This has been on my list for a long time, but it is a collection of essays about pop culture. I've read some of this author's essays just in like different magazines and things, and I always really enjoy her voice and the way that she writes, and so I feel like like I will really enjoy this, and I'm very excited to finally get to it because, like I said, I've owned it for a while. Alright, that's all of the books that I'm going to talk about today. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I really appreciate you. I hope that you read some really fantastic books this summer. Let me know some things that are on your summer TBR down below. I would love to hear about them. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and to click the bell to be notified of the next time I post. I hope you have a lovely day, and I'll see you in my next video.